Hey there, Otaku! Ken-chan here with another episode of Go Mega Otaku Gamer Alpha. And today we're staying in Japan. We were in Japan for our last episode talking about the Famicom. Today we're staying in Japan and we're going to talk about another Japanese system that came up to challenge Nintendo. It was from a company called Sega, and the system was the Sega Mega Drive. This is the Sega Mega Drive Mark I. It looks a lot like the Sega Genesis Mark I, and that's because it's basically the same thing. Now, the Sega Mega Drive was released in Japan on October 29th, 1988, almost a full year before it was released here in August of 1989 as the Sega Genesis. They sold somewhere in the neighborhood of about 40 million units of Sega Mega Drive and Sega Genesis, being that they're basically the same system. Again, we're going to try to stay away from that today. We're going to try to focus on the Mega Drive. It used ROM cartridges, and we'll talk about that. And the best-selling game, of course, was the Sonic the Hedgehog pack-in, and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was right behind it because it also ended up being a pack-in. The predecessor was the Sega Master System, and the successor was the Sega Saturn. Notice they don't count the 32X in there or the Sega CD, as those were peripherals. Now, Nintendo had dominated the video game market after they had come back with the Famicom. They single-handedly revitalized and basically reinvented the video game industry after Atari destroyed it. And Sega wanted a piece of that. They came out with the Master System and then the Master System 2. Neither of those really did that well. They needed something with a little bit more bite to it. So they decided to up the ante. Instead of having an 8-bit system like the Famicom, they would make a system that was 16-bit. And of course they invented a term for their 16-bit processing called blast processing. Okay? Now, let's get one thing perfectly clear. There's no such thing as blast processing. That's a misnomer. It's just a name that they give to something. It doesn't mean anything. Okay, before we look at the Mega Drive itself, let's look at the format that it played. Let's look at the medium. It used these cartridges. Now, this is an American Sonic the Hedgehog cartridge. Okay, and you can see the shape of it, and the end shape is, you know, it's shaped like that. This is the same game in the Japanese cartridge, Sonic the Hedgehog, the most famous hedgehog. But anyhow, this is the way they looked, and this is the difference. The Mega Drive version is, of course, more rounded. The end is squared off, whereas the Genesis version has this strange shape to it here, this lip. This is squared off. The card on the inside that holds the actual data, you can see that it's pretty much the same size, the same thing. Probably had the same number of connections. So that's where they differ. They differ ever so slightly, but you can't play this in an American Genesis, and you can't play this in a Japanese Mega Drive. And part of the reason for that, of course, is so that they don't want anybody to get a hold of something that they can't read or they can't understand and try to play it, you know, either here or in Japan. So this is kind of why they started doing this. They wanted to make sure that everybody got the right thing that they could easily understand and read, and they knew what they were they knew what they were getting. And here we have the Mega Drive in all of its glory, and this is the actual Mega Drive controller with the red A, B, and C buttons on there. Start button. You know, your typical rocker switch here. Sega in the middle there. And now this is the unit itself, which is designed exactly the same as a Sega Genesis Mark I, except it says Mega Drive down here, Sega, and instead of up here, it's this is rounded here, 16-bit, real big there. They wanted to make sure people understood that this was twice as powerful as the Famicom, yada yada yada. What was interesting about this system was it in this on-off switch here, it actually locked the cartridge. If you put a cartridge in here and you turn this on, it locks the cartridge. The cartridge doesn't come out. You turn it off, and the cartridge still doesn't come out so easily, but you can pull it out. You had a volume knob on here, because if you look here, there's a headphone adapter. You can plug in headphones and listen to it. Listen to the, the sounds and the music through the headphone adapter, and you had your headphone volume knob or switch here, which was nice. That was a nice idea. I think it's sad that they kind of pulled away from that at some point. They could have put that in, as you know, 3DO put that in their controllers. They had something similar in their controllers. Modern systems could have done that. They could have put it in their controller. Not all of them do that. I think the Xbox 360 sort of has something like that for communication. But this was to hear the game. And it was a really cool feature, a really cool built-in thing, and I'm sad they moved away from it. This is a reset button here. Cartridges go here. And that's basically your Sega Mega Drive. On the back, of course, you have an external jack there. No, that is not a VGA jack. Look again. And you had your proprietary line out, which was a video line out, and your power right there. So, Sega Mega Drive, 16-bit. Let's look at some of the games. Okay, Otaku. I think you all know what's first here. The game that I had in my hand, the almighty Sonic the Hedgehog. And this is Sonic here, and it looks exactly the same as the American version. Plays the same too. Whoa. I love Sonic the Hedgehog, but I love him most from this era. When they tried to go 3D with him, other than the first 3D Sonic the Hedgehog, the Sonic Adventure, which in hindsight wasn't really all that great. But, other than that, the 3D Sonics never really did anything for me. There's some of that blast processing I was telling you about there. Ooh. Oh, I got the bonus. Oh, no. A little Space Harrier 2 for you. This is a very difficult game. The arcade version of this, of course, looks way better than this. But this was an ample version. It did good enough. It was, for all intents and purposes, it had the same kind of gameplay. Maybe the graphics are a little bit dumbed down, a little bit slower frame rate, but for the most part, the same game.
Get ready.
Yes, the Japanese version of Altered Beast. But will they yell in Japanese? Let's find out. Huh. No, it's all in perfect English. Little Outrun 2019 for you. Hey, 2019, that's in about, what, 7 years? Back on the track. Get back on the... Here's a little Darwin 4081 for you. This is called Mugen Senshi Valis, Legend of Phantasm Soldier. Chick looks kind of like Kagome from Inuyasha. So for that decidedly otaku flavor of 16-bit video games, from a time where variety was the spice of life, and game makers still took risks, it's the Sega Mega Drive. It's a staple for any Sega collector.